The evening rush at La Blanche, one of Manhattan's most exclusive restaurants, was in full swing. The clicking of designer heels against marble floors mixed with the gentle clinking of crystal glasses and soft violin music playing in the background. Among the busy servers weaving through tables was Ming, a petite woman in her mid-twenties, carrying plates with the grace of a dancer. Her long black hair was neatly tied back in a professional bun, and despite the exhaustion evident in her eyes, she maintained a gentle smile that reached her eyes. This was her second shift of the day, but you wouldn't know it from her careful attention to every table. The weight of responsibility sat heavily on her shoulders. Her grandmother's care and her younger sister's growing medical bills weren't going to pay themselves. "Table 12 needs more wine," whispered her coworker as they passed each other. Ming nodded, already adjusting her route to the wine cellar. Table 12 meant dealing with Maxwell Thompson, and that always required extra patience. Maxwell Thompson was a regular at La Blanche, a tech millionaire who had made his fortune developing trading software. He was the kind of customer who would send back perfectly cooked steaks and complain about room temperature wine that was, in fact, served at precisely the right temperature. Tonight, he was hosting a group of potential investors, which meant he was being particularly demanding. "Ah, there you are," Thompson called out as Ming approached with the wine. "I was beginning to think we'd been forgotten." His words carried that particular tone of someone who had never worked in service a day in his life. The other guests at his table shifted uncomfortably, but no one spoke up. Ming maintained her professional composure as she presented the bottle of Chateau Margaux. "My apologies for the wait, sir. Would you like to taste it first?" Her voice was soft but clear, with just a hint of an accent that she had worked hard to soften over the years. As she poured the wine, she could feel Thompson watching her with that calculating look she'd come to recognize from wealthy patrons who viewed servers as part of the furniture. What she didn't expect was what came next. "You handle yourself well," he said, swirling the wine in his glass. "We're having a charity gala at my house next weekend. High-profile guests, very exclusive. We could use someone with your attention to detail." He named a figure that was triple her usual night's earnings. Ming's heart skipped a beat. That kind of money could cover her sister's next round of treatment with enough left over for her grandmother's medications. She knew working for Thompson would be challenging. His reputation for being difficult was well known among the staff. But some opportunities were too important to pass up, even if they came wrapped in thinly veiled condescension. "Thank you for the offer, Mr. Thompson," she replied carefully. "I would be honored to help." She wrote down the details he provided, all while a small voice in her head wondered if she was making a mistake. As she walked back to the kitchen, Ming passed the restaurant's grand piano, positioned perfectly in the corner of the main dining room. For a moment, her fingers twitched at her side, muscle memory from a different life trying to surface. She quickly pushed the feeling away. She hadn't touched a piano in 10 years, not since that rainy night when everything changed. Little did she know that accepting Thompson's offer would bring her past rushing back in ways she never expected, and that sometimes the hardest notes to play are the ones that have been silent the longest. The week passed quickly, and before Ming knew it, she was standing in front of Thompson's mansion, a towering structure of glass and stone that seemed to touch the evening sky. She hugged her black serving jacket closer, fighting off both the autumn chill and her growing nervousness. Other servers, hired from various upscale restaurants, were arriving too, their expressions a mix of awe and anxiety. Everyone, gather round, called the head server, a stern-looking woman with graying hair. "Mr. Thompson's guests are Manhattan's elite. One mistake could cost us all our jobs." She handed out serving trays and assigned sections. Ming got the main living room, the heart of the party. The mansion's interior took Ming's breath away. Crystal chandeliers cast rainbow shadows across marble floors, and priceless artwork adorned every wall. But what caught her eye and made her heart stumble was the magnificent grand piano in the corner of the living room. It wasn't just any piano. It was a Steinway Model D Concert Grand, the exact model she used to practice on at school. Don't even think about touching it. Thompson's voice came from behind her, making her jump. He was already dressed in an expensive tuxedo, a glass of scotch in hand. That's a $500,000 instrument. We have a professional pianist coming later. His tone carried that familiar mix of amusement and disdain. The party began, and Ming fell into the familiar rhythm of serving. She glided between guests in designer gowns and custom suits, offering champagne and hors d'oeuvres. She overheard snippets of conversations about stock portfolios, yacht purchases, and upcoming charity galas. A world so different from her tiny apartment, where she and her grandmother took turns sleeping on the fold-out couch so her sister could have the bedroom. Everything was going smoothly until Thompson's phone rang. His face darkened as he listened. "What do you mean you're not coming?" He barked into the phone. "A better offer. I paid you in advance." He ended the call with a curse. The pianist had canceled. Ming tried to make herself invisible as Thompson's mood soured. She'd seen his temper at the restaurant before, but here, in his own home, he seemed even more imposing. The guests were starting to notice the missing music, the atmosphere growing stale without it. "You!" Thompson suddenly called out, pointing at Ming. The champagne flutes on her tray clinked as she froze. "I've seen you staring at that piano all night. Think you can do better than serving drinks." The room grew quiet. Dozens of eyes turned to her, some curious, others already embarrassed on her behalf. Thompson's face held a cruel smile. He was looking for entertainment, and she was his target. I don't." Ming started to say, but Thompson was already walking towards her, taking her serving tray and handing it to another server. "Come on, show us what you can do," he said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Unless you're afraid." The challenge in his voice was clear. This was punishment for her supposed presumption, for daring to look too long at something beyond her station. Ming felt heat rise in her cheeks. In her mind, she could hear her grandmother's voice. Sometimes pride must bow to necessity. She had taken this job for the money, had endured Thompson's attitude for her family. But standing there, with all those privileged eyes on her, something else stirred. A spark of the person she used to be, before life had forced her to set her dreams aside. The piano seemed to call to her from across the room. 10 years of dust had settled on her dreams of performing, but underneath, the muscle memory waited. As she took her first step toward the instrument, her hands trembling slightly at her sides, she didn't know if she was about to experience triumph or humiliation. But she knew she had to try. As Ming walked toward the piano, memories flooded back like a tidal wave. She remembered the old upright piano in their living room, where her mother first taught her to play Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star when she was just 4 years old. Her tiny fingers would stretch across the keys while sitting on a stack of phone books to reach the proper height. Those early lessons had turned into something more when her elementary school music teacher noticed her talent. "Your daughter has a gift," she had told Ming's parents. "She hears music differently than other children." Before long, Ming was performing in local competitions, her mother beaming proudly from the audience, her father recording every performance on their old camcorder. The acceptance letter from Juilliard's pre-college program had felt like a golden ticket. Every Saturday, her father would drive her into the city from their modest home in Queens, leaving at dawn to beat the traffic. She'd spend entire days immersed in music theory, practice sessions, and performances. Her teachers spoke of future concert halls and international tours. The other students came from wealthy families, but in the practice rooms, only talent mattered. Then came that rainy October night 10 years ago. Ming had been practicing late at school for an upcoming recital when her grandmother called. Her parents' car had skidded on the wet highway. They never made it home. The following weeks passed in a blur of funeral arrangements and impossible decisions. Her sister, only 8 at the time, needed special medical care for her chronic condition. Their grandmother, who moved in to take care of them, was too old to work. The insurance money wouldn't last long. Ming still remembered standing in the Juilliard administrative office, withdrawing from the program. Her teacher had protested, talking about scholarships and special arrangements. But Ming knew the truth. Her family needed her to work, not chase dreams. She found the waitressing job at Le Blanc through a family friend. The restaurant's elegant atmosphere reminded her of concert halls, and sometimes, during quiet moments, she would hear classical music in her head, her fingers moving slightly as she carried plates. Over the years, she'd avoided pianos completely. The grand piano at the restaurant was easy to ignore. It was usually covered, and the pianists who played, there were professionals who came and went without speaking to the staff. But this Steinway before her now was different. It stood proud and open, its black surface gleaming under the chandelier lights, keys waiting expectantly like old friends hoping to reconnect. A murmur went through the crowd as she approached the instrument. She could hear Thompson's smug chuckle, could feel the weight of judgment from his wealthy guests. They were expecting a disaster. A clumsy server embarrassing herself for their entertainment. What they didn't see were the calluses still on her fingers from years of practice, hidden beneath the professional manicure required for serving. They didn't know about the countless hours she spent mastering scales and arpeggios, or the way she still heard symphonies in her dreams. As she sat down on the bench, adjusting it with the familiar motion that had once been as natural as breathing, her grandmother's words from long ago echoed in her mind. Music is in your blood, little one. It's not something you do, it's something you are. Ming placed her hands on the keys, feeling the cool ivory beneath her fingers. The muscle memory was there, waiting, like a language she'd learned in childhood. Rusty from disuse, but not forgotten. In that moment, she wasn't the server anymore. She was that young girl again, sitting at her first recital, her mother's voice whispering, "Play from your heart, and they will listen." The party guests had formed a loose circle around the grand piano, their faces showing a mix of curiosity and secondhand embarrassment. Crystal glasses clinked as people shifted uncomfortably, waiting for what they assumed would be an awkward spectacle. Thompson stood at the front, his expression caught between amusement and impatience. Ming closed her eyes for a moment, letting the familiar smell of polished wood and ivory wash over her. The Steinway even smelled expensive, a rich, deep scent that spoke of careful maintenance and regular tuning. Her serving uniform felt stiff and confining as she adjusted her posture on the bench, muscle memory from countless lessons taking over. "Well?" Thompson's voice cut through her concentration. "We don't have all night." A few nervous laughs rippled through the crowd. Someone whispered, "Poor girl," just loud enough for Ming to hear. Taking a deep breath, Ming recalled her last performance at Juilliard. She had played Chopin that day too, her mother's favorite composer. The piece had earned her a standing ovation and a nomination for a prestigious young artist competition. A competition she never got to attend. The first notes of Chopin's Nocturne No. 20 in C-sharp minor floated into the air. Ming's fingers moved tentatively at first, like someone testing the temperature of a pool before diving in. The piece started softly, almost questioning, perfect for her uncertain return to the keys after so long. A woman in a red designer dress who had been mid-sip of champagne slowly lowered her glass. The quiet conversations around the piano died away. Even the servers stopped their rounds, standing still with their trays of appetizers, watching. As Ming reached the end of the first phrase, muscle memory fully kicked in. Her hands remembered the way the piece swelled and softened, like waves on a peaceful shore. The Steinway responded beautifully to her touch, its rich tone filling the massive room with warmth. Thompson's smirk began to fade. He took a step closer to the piano, his brow furrowing as he watched Ming's fingers dance across the keys with increasing confidence. This wasn't the fumbling attempt he had expected. This was something else entirely. The piece grew more complex, building toward its emotional center. Ming felt tears pricking at the corners of her eyes, but she didn't stop. Each note brought back memories. Her mother humming along as she practiced, her father's proud smile, her sister falling asleep on the couch listening to her play. An older gentleman in the crowd leaned forward, his eyes wide with recognition. He whispered something to his companion, who nodded vigorously. Ming didn't notice. She was lost in the music now, her body swaying slightly as she played the flowing melody. The room's atmosphere had transformed. The same people who moments ago had been preparing to witness her humiliation now stood transfixed. Some had closed their eyes, others wore expressions of genuine amazement. A young woman in the back wiped away a tear. As Ming approached the piece's climax, her fingers moved with the surety of someone who had played this music thousands of times. The Steinways sang under her touch, its powerful bass notes resonating through the floorboards while the higher registers sparkled like starlight. Thompson stood frozen, his half-empty wine glass forgotten in his hand. The cruel entertainment he had planned had turned into something entirely unexpected. Instead of humiliating a server, he had unknowingly put a masterful musician on display. The piece's final section approached, and Ming played it with all the emotion she had held back over the years. Each note carried the weight of her sacrificed dreams, her love for her family, and the unexpected joy of returning to her first love, music. As she played the final phrases, time seemed to stop in the grand room, every person there held captive by the beauty of what they were witnessing. As the last notes of Chopin's Nocturne faded into the hushed silence of the room, Ming's hands rested gently on the keys. For a moment, no one moved or spoke. The spell of her performance hung in the air like morning mist, delicate and ethereal. Then, as if a dam had broken, the room erupted in applause. It wasn't the polite, reserved clapping of wealthy people being charitable. It was genuine, enthusiastic, and heartfelt. People were standing, some wiping tears from their eyes, others shaking their heads in disbelief. Extraordinary, breathed a silver-haired woman in a blue evening gown. Simply extraordinary. Her companion nodded vigorously, still clapping. Ming felt her cheeks flush as she stood from the piano bench. The familiar motion of smoothing her serving apron brought her back to reality. She was still at work, still there to serve these people. But something had shifted in the way they looked at her. Thompson stood rooted to his spot, his face a complex mixture of emotions: embarrassment, amazement, and something that might have been shame. The cruel joke he had intended had transformed into a moment of unexpected beauty, and he didn't quite know how to handle it. Young lady, a distinguished-looking gentleman, made his way through the crowd. His accent was European, possibly German, and he carried himself with the air of someone important. That was a remarkable interpretation of Chopin. Where did you study? Before Ming could answer, another voice cut in. She doesn't just serve drinks, does she, Thompson? This came from a woman in her 50s, her gray hair elegantly styled, wearing a simple but obviously expensive black dress. I'm curious. Did you know about her talent when you tried to humiliate her? Thompson opened his mouth, then closed it again. For once, the wealthy tech millionaire seemed at a loss for words. The European gentleman was still focused on Ming. My dear, I'm the director of the city's symphony orchestra. We have a community program that brings music education to underprivileged children. Would you be interested in teaching? The salary is modest compared to performing. What? Ming's heart skipped a beat. Teaching music? The possibility of returning to the world she had left behind, even in a different role, made her hands tremble slightly. I haven't played in 10 years, she admitted softly. Not since my parents. Her voice trailed off, but the symphony director's kind eyes showed understanding. Music never truly leaves us, he said gently. What you just played proved that. Think about it. Here's my card. Other guests began approaching, each with their own questions and comments. A mother asked if Ming would consider teaching her daughter. A retired pianist wanted to discuss her technique. The woman in the black dress turned out to be a board member at a prestigious music school. In the midst of this, Ming caught sight of Thompson making his way toward her. The crowd parted slightly, watching with interest. He stopped in front of her, and for a moment just looked at her, really looked at her, perhaps for the first time. "I owe you an apology," he said quietly, his usual arrogance absent from his voice. "What I did, what I tried to do, it was cruel and beneath me." He paused, then continued, "Would you tell me your story? The real one, not just what's on your job application." Ming looked at the man who had tried to embarrass her just minutes ago, seeing the genuine regret in his eyes. Around them, the party had resumed its normal flow, but nothing felt normal anymore. In the span of one piece of music, her world had shifted on its axis. She glanced at the piano, then back at Thompson. "It's a long story," she said softly, "and it begins with an old upright piano and a little girl who fell in love with music." As the party continued around them, Ming and Thompson sat in a quiet corner of the vast living room. She had removed her serving apron, and someone had handed her a glass of water. The piano stood silently in the background, a reminder of how quickly life can change. "I was 12 when I got into Juilliard's pre-college program," Ming began, her fingers absently tracing the rim of her water glass. "My parents were immigrants. My father worked as a mechanic, my mother cleaned houses. They spent every extra penny on my music lessons." Thompson listened intently, his usual impatience nowhere to be seen. The symphony director had joined them, along with the woman in the black dress who introduced herself as a trustee of the Manhattan Music Academy. "Every Saturday, my father would drive me into the city. He never complained of the early mornings or the long waits. He'd pack lunch for us both, always bringing extra in case I made new friends." Ming smiled at the memory. "My mother recorded every single performance on this old video camera. She said she wanted to document my journey to Carnegie Hall." She paused, taking a sip of water. "Then came the accident. My sister was 8, already dealing with her medical condition. Our grandmother moved in to help, but she was too old to work. Someone had to support the family, and I was the oldest." "But why completely stop playing?" the symphony director asked gently. "Surely there were other options." Ming shook her head. "When you're 16 and suddenly responsible for 3 people's survival, you learn to put dreams away. I couldn't practice 4 hours a day and work enough to pay the bills. The restaurant job paid well, had good tips. It seemed like the responsible choice." Thompson shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "And all this time at LeBlanc's, hearing the pianists there." "I learned to tune it out," Ming said quietly. "It hurt less that way. But sometimes, late at night, when the restaurant was almost empty, I'd hear a piece my mother loved. And—" She trailed off, her eyes distant. The trustee leaned forward. "Your talent hasn't diminished. What you played tonight, that wasn't just muscle memory. That was pure musicianship." "The teaching position," the symphony director added, "it could be just the beginning. We have practice rooms you could use. There are adult education programs, performance opportunities." Thompson suddenly stood up. Everyone looked at him in surprise. "I'd like to help," he said, his voice firm. "A scholarship fund, perhaps, for students like you were, talented but facing difficult circumstances." Ming stared at him, remembering his cruel smirk just hours ago. "People really could surprise you. And," he continued, looking slightly embarrassed, "I know the owner of LeBlanc. I could speak to him about adjusting your schedule, making it more flexible if you decide to pursue music again." The trustee nodded approvingly. The academy could provide performance spaces for the scholarship students. Maybe even— She paused, looking at Ming. "Would you consider sharing your story with them? Show them that setbacks don't have to be permanent." Ming felt tears forming in her eyes. She thought about her grandmother, who still hummed her old practice pieces while cooking. Her sister, who had never really heard her play. the years of pushing aside her passion to be responsible. "I'd need time to practice," she said slowly, "to get back to where I was." "Time heals," the symphony director said kindly. "And music. Music waits for us. It's patient that way." Ming looked across the room at the Steinway, its keys still visible in the warm light. For the first time in 10 years, she allowed herself to imagine a future where responsibility and passion could coexist, where the weight of her past could become a foundation instead of a burden. "Where would we start?" she asked softly. 3 weeks after the party, Ming stood in front of a room full of children at the community music center. Their faces showed a mixture of curiosity and restlessness as they sat cross-legged on the carpet. A row of keyboards lined the walls, and an old upright piano stood at the front of the room. "Music is like magic," she began, her voice gentle but carrying to every corner. "It can make you happy when you're sad, give you energy when you're tired, and tell stories without using any words." A small boy in the front raised his hand. "My mom says I have to practice every day, but I don't want to," he said with complete honesty, making the other children giggle. Ming smiled, remembering her own childhood struggles. "Can I tell you a secret?" she asked, kneeling down to their level. "When I was your age, I sometimes didn't want to practice either." She walked to the old upright piano, running her fingers along its scratched surface. The symphony director had been right. Getting back into music wasn't like starting over, but like waking up a sleeping part of herself. "But then my mother taught me something special," she continued. "She said practicing isn't about playing the same thing over and over. It's about telling your own story through music." Ming sat at the piano and played a simple melody with one hand. "This could be the sound of rain on your window." She added her left hand, creating a gentle harmony. "And this could be the sound of your cat purring or your baby sister laughing." The children leaned forward, their eyes wide. Even the restless ones had gone still, watching her hands move across the keys. Later that afternoon, Ming sat in one of the practice rooms, working on a piece for her upcoming recital. Thompson had kept his word. Not only had he spoken to the restaurant owner about her schedule, but he had also established a scholarship fund for young musicians facing financial hardships. The trustee from the Music Academy had become her mentor, helping her navigate her return to the music world. "You're not just teaching them notes," she had told Ming. "You're showing them that dreams can take detours but still find their way home." Ming's fingers moved across the keys with growing confidence. She was practicing Debussy now, her grandmother's favorite. The piece still needed work, but each day brought back more of her old skill, enhanced by a depth of emotion that only life experience could bring. A knock at the practice room door made her pause. It was her sister, home from college for the weekend. Since the party, Ming had started teaching her simple pieces on their grandmother's old keyboard. It wasn't the Steinway, but it made music all the same. "The kids love you," her sister said, settling into a chair. "I heard them in the hallway. One little girl told her mother she wants to be just like Teacher Ming when she grows up." Ming felt her heart warm at those words. She thought about that little girl and all the other children in her class. Some came from families like hers had been, struggling to make ends meet, but determined to give their children every opportunity. Others had different challenges, different dreams. "Ready to try that duet?" Ming asked her sister, scooting over on the piano bench. Their grandmother had always said that music sounded better when shared. As they played together, Ming realized that her mother had been right all those years ago. Playing from the heart made people listen. But what she hadn't known then was that sometimes life takes away one dream to lead you to another, one that's bigger than just yourself. Through the practice room window, she could see the afternoon sun painting the city in shades of gold. Somewhere in that sprawling metropolis, another young musician might be setting aside their dreams, thinking they had to choose between passion and responsibility. Ming hoped her story would reach them, showing that sometimes the most beautiful melodies come after the longest rests. 1 year later, Ming stood backstage at the community center's auditorium, her heart racing with familiar pre-performance butterflies. The annual student showcase was about to begin, and through the curtain, she could hear the excited murmur of the packed audience. Her students were lined up beside her, dressed in their best outfits, nervously adjusting their sheet music. The little boy who had once complained about practicing was now bouncing on his toes, eager to show off the piece he had mastered. "Remember what we talked about," Ming whispered to them, kneeling down. "It's not about playing perfectly. It's about sharing your love of music." In the audience sat her grandmother, beaming with pride, alongside her sister who had driven in from college for the event. Thompson was there too. He had become one of the program's biggest supporters, regularly attending student recitals and funding additional music education initiatives across the city. The showcase began with her youngest students playing simple duets, their small fingers carefully picking out melodies they had practiced for weeks. Each performance was met with enthusiastic applause, parents leaning forward to record every moment on their phones, just as Ming's mother had done years ago. During intermission, the symphony director found her backstage. "The board is impressed with what you've accomplished here," he said warmly. "They want to expand the program to other community centers. We'd like you to help develop the curriculum." Ming felt tears pricking at her eyes. Her teaching schedule had grown from one small class to several, including an evening program for adults who, like her, had set aside their musical dreams. Some of her students were former servers, office workers, and taxi drivers, all finding their way back to music. The second half of the showcase featured her advanced students. As she watched them perform, she remembered each breakthrough moment, each small victory that had led to this point. The shy girl who now played with confidence, the frustrated boy who had finally found his rhythm. For the finale, Ming had planned something special. She took her place at the grand piano, a new one, donated by Thompson to replace the old upright. Her students gathered around, each holding their instruments. Together, they performed an arrangement she had written, weaving together classical themes with simple melodies her students had composed. It was a piece about journeys, about falling down and getting back up, about dreams that take unexpected paths. As the last notes faded, Ming caught sight of a new face in the audience, the owner of La Blanc. She still worked there occasionally, but now as the restaurant's regular pianist for special events. Life had come full circle in the most unexpected way. After the performance, during the reception, her grandmother pulled her aside. In her hands was an old, worn envelope. "Your mother wrote this," she said softly, "the day you got into Juilliard. She wanted you to read it when you gave your first big concert." Ming opened the envelope with trembling fingers. Inside, in her mother's elegant handwriting, was a simple message: "Music will always lead you home." Looking around the room at her students chatting excitedly with their families, at Thompson discussing future programs with the symphony director, at her sister recording everything on her phone just like their mother used to do, Ming felt a deep sense of peace. She hadn't become the concert pianist her parents had dreamed of, but she had found something perhaps even more meaningful: the ability to keep their love of music alive by passing it on to others. Every time one of her students discovered the joy of playing, every time an adult rekindled their passion for music, her parents' legacy grew stronger. The community center's lights began to dim, signaling the end of the evening. But for Ming and her students, this was just the beginning. Tomorrow would bring new pieces to learn, new challenges to overcome, and new dreams to chase. As she gathered her sheet music, Ming hummed softly to herself, the same lullaby her mother used to sing, now transformed into a song of hope for the future. Sometimes the most beautiful music comes from the heart's detours, from the unexpected harmonies life creates when we're brave enough to play a different tune.
Maya stood outside the fancy restaurant and watched people eat through the big glass windows. Her stomach made loud noises. She had not eaten anything for 2 days. The smell of food came through the door every time someone walked in or out. It made her feel even more hungry. The restaurant was called Bella Vista. It had white tablecloths and shiny glasses. People inside wore nice clothes and laughed as they ate. Maya looked down at her own clothes. Her jeans had holes in them. Her shirt was too big and had stains on it. Her shoes had tape holding them together. Maya touched the small bag she carried. Inside were some old papers with music written on them. They were the only things she had left from her old life. She held the bag close to her chest. A man in a suit walked past her. He looked at her with disgust and moved away quickly. Maya was used to people looking at her like that. When you live on the street, people think you are dangerous or dirty. They don't want to be near you, but Maya was not dangerous. She was just hungry and tired. She had been sleeping in doorways and under bridges. Sometimes she found food in garbage cans behind stores. Sometimes kind people gave her money or food, but not very often. Maya watched a family inside the restaurant. They were eating pasta and bread. The children were laughing, the parents were smiling. Maya remembered when she used to eat dinner with her family. That felt like a long time ago now. She walked closer to the window. Inside, she could see something that made her heart beat faster. In the corner of the restaurant, there was a black piano. It looked old and dusty. No one was playing it. Some people had put their coats on top of it. Maya knew about pianos. She had played piano since she was very small. Her father had taught her. He said she had magic in her fingers. He said she could make the piano sing. But that was before everything went wrong. Before her father died. Before her mother got sick. Before they lost their house. Before Maya ended up alone on the streets. Maya stood there for a long time, just looking at the piano. She imagined sitting at it and playing music. She imagined her fingers touching the keys and making beautiful sounds. She imagined people listening and smiling. Then Maya made a decision. She was going to go inside and ask if she could play the piano. Maybe they would give her some food if she played music for them. Maybe they would be kind. Maya pushed open the heavy door of the restaurant. A bell rang as she walked in. The warm air hit her face. It smelled like garlic and bread and soup. Her stomach made another loud noise. Everyone in the restaurant turned to look at her. Their faces changed when they saw her dirty clothes and messy hair. Some people frowned. Others whispered to each other. A few people looked angry. A man in a black suit walked over to her quickly. He had a name tag that said manager. His face was not friendly. "Excuse me," he said in a cold voice. "You cannot be in here. This is a nice restaurant. You need to leave now." Maya felt her face get hot. Her hands were shaking. But she did not leave. "Please," she said quietly. "I just want to ask you something." The manager crossed his arms. "What do you want?" Maya pointed to the piano in the corner. "I can play music," she said. "Can I play your piano? Just for a little while? Maybe you could give me some food?" The manager stared at her. Then he started to laugh. It was not a nice laugh. Other people in the restaurant heard him and started laughing too. "You want to play piano for food?" The manager said loudly. "Like a street performer?" Maya nodded. "Yes, I can play really well. I promise." More people were laughing now. Maya heard someone say, "What's next? Is she going to dance for dessert?" Another person said, "Call the police. Get her out of here." Maya felt tears in her eyes, but she did not cry. She had learned not to cry when people were mean to her. Crying made things worse. The manager looked around the restaurant. All his customers were watching. Some looked entertained. They thought this was funny. "Fine," the manager said with a mean smile. "You can play the piano, but only for 5 minutes. And if you're terrible, you leave immediately. No food, nothing." Maya nodded quickly. "Thank you," she said. The manager walked over to the piano. He moved the coats off of it and opened the lid. The piano keys were yellow and some of them had chips in them. But Maya could see that it was still a good piano. "Ladies and gentlemen," the manager announced loudly, "we have special entertainment tonight. This young lady is going to play piano for us." People clapped, but not in a nice way. They were clapping like they expected her to fail. They were clapping like they thought it would be funny to watch her make a fool of herself. Maya, walked slowly to the piano. Her legs felt weak. Everyone was staring at her. She could hear people whispering. Someone laughed. She sat down on the piano bench. It felt good to sit down. She had been walking all day. The bench was soft and comfortable. So different from the hard ground where she usually slept. Maya looked at the piano keys. They were like old friends. She had not played piano in months, not since she lost her home, not since she had to sell her mother's piano to buy food. She put her hands on the keys but did not press them yet. She closed her eyes and remembered her father's voice. He used to say, "Music comes from your heart, Maya. Let your heart speak through your fingers." Maya opened her eyes. She looked around the restaurant one more time. Everyone was watching her. Some people had their phones out to record her. They probably wanted to post videos of the homeless girl trying to play piano. Maya took a deep breath. Her father had always told her to be brave. He said that music could change people's hearts. He said that music was the most powerful thing in the world. Maya put her fingers on the keys and began to play. The first note that came from the piano was soft and gentle. Maya's right hand played a simple melody. It sounded like a bird singing in the morning. The note hung in the air for a moment. Then Maya added another note, and another. Her left hand joined in, playing deeper notes that sounded like a heartbeat. The music was quiet at first, like a whisper. In the restaurant, people were still talking and laughing. They were not really listening. Someone clinked a glass. A waitress walked by carrying plates. The manager stood with his arms crossed, looking at his watch. But Maya did not care. She was not playing for them anymore. She was playing for herself. She was playing for her father. She was playing because the music was inside her and needed to come out. The melody grew stronger. Maya's fingers moved faster on the keys. The simple song became more complex. She added harmony and rhythm. The piano started to sing. One person at a table near the piano stopped talking. She turned to look at Maya. The music was beautiful. It was not what she expected from a homeless girl. Maya's hands danced across the keys like they had a life of their own. Her fingers remembered every lesson her father had taught her. They remembered hours of practice. They remembered the feeling of making music. The song Maya was playing was called Clair de Lune by a composer named Debussy. It was a difficult piece. Most people could not play it well even after years of practice. But Maya played it like she had written it herself. The music filled the restaurant like water filling a cup. It flowed around the tables and into every corner. It was impossible to ignore. More people stopped talking. A man put down his fork and turned to watch Maya. A woman at another table closed her menu and listened. Even the waiters and cooks began to pay attention. Maya's eyes were closed as she played. In her mind, she could see moonlight on water. She could see her father sitting beside her at their old piano. She could feel his hand on her shoulder, encouraging her. The music grew louder and more emotional. Maya poured all of her sadness into the notes, all of her loneliness, all of her fear. But she also put in hope. She put in memories of love. She put in dreams of a better future. A child at one of the tables stopped eating and stared at Maya with wide eyes. The child had never heard music like this before. It made her feel things she did not have words for. The restaurant became quieter and quieter. Conversations stopped in the middle of sentences. People forgot about their food. They forgot about their phones. They forgot about everything except the music. Maya moved from Clair de Lune into another piece. This one was by Chopin. It was a nocturne, a night song. Maya played it with such feeling that some people felt tears in their eyes. The manager stopped looking at his watch. His mouth was open. This was not what he had expected. This girl was not just playing the piano. She was making magic. A woman at a corner table began to cry quietly. The music reminded her of her grandmother, who used to play piano for her when she was little. She had not thought about her grandmother in years. Maya's hands moved like birds, flying across the keys. She played high notes that sparkled like stars. She played low notes that rumbled like thunder. She made the piano sound like an entire orchestra. Some people in the restaurant took out their phones, but not to make fun of Maya. They wanted to record the beautiful music. They had never heard anything like this in their lives. The kitchen. Staff came out to listen. The cook was holding a ladle. The dishwasher was still wearing rubber gloves. They all stood quietly, amazed by what they were hearing. Maya played for 15 minutes, but it felt like hours to the people listening. She played classical pieces that most of them had never heard before, but the music spoke to them anyway. Music does not need words. It speaks directly to the heart. An old man at a table near the window wiped his eyes with his napkin. He had fought in a war many years ago. The music reminded him of beauty in a world that sometimes seemed ugly. Maya finally began to play her last piece. It was something her father had taught her when she was very young, a simple lullaby. But Maya played it with such love and sadness that it became something much more. As the last note faded away, the restaurant was completely silent. No one moved. No one spoke. They were all still under the spell of Maya's music. Then, slowly, one person began to clap, then another. Then everyone in the restaurant was clapping. But it was not the mean clapping from before. This was real applause. This was respect. Maya opened her eyes and looked around. People were standing up and clapping, some were crying, some were smiling. All of them were looking at her with amazement. The manager walked over to Maya. His face had completely changed. He looked shocked and embarrassed. "Miss," he said quietly, I apologize, that was incredible. Where did you learn to play like that?" Maya stood up from the piano bench. Her legs were shaking. She was not used to so many people looking at her with kindness. "My father taught me," she said simply. The manager nodded. Would you like something to eat? Anything you want. It's on the house." Maya felt tears in her eyes for the first time in months. But these were happy tears. "Yes, please," she said. "I would like that very much." As Maya walked to a table, people reached out to touch her arm gently. They said things like beautiful and amazing and thank you. Maya had not felt this much kindness in a long time. But in the corner of the restaurant, one woman was watching Maya more carefully than the others. This woman had gray hair and kind eyes. She was a music teacher and she knew talent when she heard it. She knew that what Maya had just done was not normal. It was extraordinary. The woman's name was Dr. Elena Rossetti, and she had taught music for 40 years. She had heard many good pianists in her life, but she had never heard anyone play with as much soul as this young homeless girl. Dr. Rossetti made a decision. She was going to talk to Maya. She was going to find out who this girl was and where she came from. Because talent like this should not be wasted. Talent like this should be nurtured and protected. Maya sat at a table and ordered soup and bread. As she waited for her food, she looked around the restaurant. Everyone was still looking at her, but now their faces were kind. For the first time, in months, Maya felt like she belonged somewhere. She did not know that her life was about to change forever. Maya ate her soup slowly. It was the best food she had tasted in months. The bread was warm and soft. The soup was thick with vegetables and chicken. She tried to eat carefully, like her father had taught her. Even though she was very hungry, she did not want to eat too fast and make people think she had no manners. As she ate, Maya remembered other dinners from long ago. She remembered sitting at a big wooden table with her parents. Her mother would make pasta with tomato sauce. Her father would tell funny stories that made Maya laugh until her stomach hurt. Those days felt like a dream now. Sometimes Maya wondered if they had really happened. Had she really lived in a house with her own room? Had she really owned pretty dresses and had toys and books? Had she really gone to a good school where everyone was kind to her? Maya touched the small bag beside her chair. Inside were the old music papers that her father had given her. They were yellow now, and some had tears in them, but they were all she had left of her old life. Maya's father was named David Chen. He was a famous piano player who performed in concert halls all over the world. People would pay lots of money to hear him play. He had won awards and prizes. Newspapers wrote articles about him. David met Maya's mother, Sarah, when she was a nurse at a hospital. Sarah was taking care of David after he hurt his hand in an accident. Sarah was beautiful and kind. She had never heard classical music before, but when David played for her, she fell in love with both him and his music. Maya was born 2 years after her parents got married. From the time she was very small, Maya was surrounded by music. David would play piano for her when she cried. He would play lullabies to help her sleep. When Maya was old enough to walk, she would climb onto the piano bench and try to press the keys. David saw that Maya had a gift. When she was only 3 years old, she could hear a song once and then play it back perfectly. When she was 5, David started teaching her how to read music. By the time she was 7, Maya could play pieces that most adults could not play. "You have magic in your fingers, little bird," David would tell Maya. "Music is your language. You speak it better than words." Maya loved practicing piano with her father. Every day after school, they would sit together at their big black piano. David was patient and kind. He never got angry when Maya made mistakes. He would just smile and say, "Try again. The music will come." Maya's mother, Sarah, would listen from the kitchen as she cooked dinner. She loved hearing her husband and daughter play together. Sometimes she would dance while they played. Maya and David would laugh and play faster, trying to make Sarah dance in silly ways. The family lived in a big house with a music room. The room had windows that looked out on a garden. In the spring, Maya could see flowers blooming while she practiced. In the winter, she could watch snow falling on the trees. Maya went to a special school for children who were good at music. It was called the Metropolitan Youth Conservatory. The teachers there were amazed by Maya's talent. They said she might become a famous pianist like her father someday. Maya had friends at the conservatory. They would practice together and perform in concerts. Maya loved performing. When she played for an audience, she felt like she was sharing a gift. She felt like she was making people happy. But everything changed when Maya was 14 years old. David was driving home from a concert on a rainy night. Another car ran a red light and hit David's car. David was taken to the hospital, but the doctors could not save him. He died 3 days later. Maya's world fell apart. Her father was not just her parent. He was her teacher, her friend, her musical partner. Without him, Maya felt lost. Sarah was heartbroken too. She had loved David more than anything. She could not eat or sleep. She could not work. She spent all day crying and looking at pictures of David. The family had some money saved, but it was not enough. David's medical bills were very expensive. The funeral cost a lot of money too. Sarah had to sell many of their things to pay the bills. Maya tried to keep going to the conservatory, but it was hard. Every time she played piano, she thought about her father. Every song reminded her of him. Sometimes she would start crying in the middle of practicing. Sarah started taking medicine to help her feel better, but the medicine made her sleepy and confused. Sometimes she would forget to buy food. Sometimes she would forget to pay the bills. Maya tried to take care of her mother. She would cook simple meals and clean the house. She would remind Sarah to take her medicine and to go to her doctor appointments. But Maya was only 14. She did not know how to take care of an adult. Things got worse and worse. Sarah lost her job because she missed too many days. They could not pay the rent for their big house. They had to move to a small apartment. Maya had to leave the conservatory because they could not pay the tuition. She went to a regular public school instead. The music program there was not very good. Maya felt like she was losing her musical training. In the small apartment, there was no room for their big piano. Sarah had to sell it to pay for food and rent. When the men came to take the piano away, Maya cried for hours. It felt like they were taking away the last piece of her father. Sarah's medicine stopped working. She became very sad and angry. She started drinking alcohol to make the sadness go away. But the alcohol made everything worse. When Maya was 15, Sarah lost their apartment. They had to live in a shelter for homeless families. The shelter was crowded and noisy. Maya could not practice music there. She could not even do her homework properly. Maya tried to get a job to help with money, but she was too young. She could only work a few hours at some places, and they did not pay very much. One day, Maya came back to the shelter and found that her mother was gone. Sarah had left a note saying she was sorry, but she could not take care of Maya anymore. She said she was going to find help for her problems. She said she would come back when she was better. But Sarah never came back. Maya was alone in the world. She was 16 years old and had nowhere to go. The shelter could only keep her for a few weeks. After that, she would have to leave. Maya took her father's old sheet music and left the shelter. She had been living on the streets ever since. That was 6 months ago. Sometimes Maya would find a piano in a library or a school and ask if she could play it. But most places said no. They were worried about homeless people causing trouble. Maya's hands became rough from cold weather and hard living. Her fingers were not as quick as they used to be. She was afraid she was losing her musical ability. But tonight, when she sat at the piano in Bella Vista restaurant, all of her training came back. All of her father's lessons were still inside her. The music was still there, waiting to come out. Maya finished her soup and looked around the restaurant. People were still watching her with kind faces. She felt warm and safe for the first time in months. But Maya also felt scared. What would happen tomorrow? Where would she sleep tonight? Would anyone ever believe that she had once been a promising young pianist? Maya did not know that across the restaurant Dr. Elena Rossetti was watching her carefully. Dr. Rossetti had taught many talented students in her 40 years as a music professor. She knew real talent when she heard it, and she knew that Maya was special. Dr. Rossetti was making a plan. She was going to help this remarkable young woman. She was going to make sure that Maya's talent did not go to waste. Maya's story was far from over. It was just beginning. Maya finished eating and wiped her mouth with the white napkin. She had never felt so full and content in months. The warm food had filled her empty stomach, but more than that, the kindness of the people around her had filled her empty heart. She stood up from her table, ready to leave. The manager had been very kind to give her free food, and she did not want to take advantage of his generosity. Maya knew that homeless people were not welcome in nice places like this. She had learned to leave quickly before people changed their minds about being nice to her. But as Maya picked up her small bag and started walking toward the door, an older woman with gray hair and kind eyes stood up from her table. "Excuse me, dear," the woman said in a gentle voice. "Could I speak with you for a moment?" Maya stopped and looked at the woman. She was about 60 years old and wore a simple but nice dress. Her face was warm and friendly. She did not look at Maya with pity or disgust like most people did. She looked at Maya with respect. "I don't want to cause any trouble," Maya said quietly. "I was just leaving." "Oh, you're not causing trouble at all," the woman said with a smile. "Quite the opposite. What you just did was extraordinary. I'm Dr. Elena Rossetti, and I've been teaching music for 40 years. I've never heard anyone play piano like that." Maya's eyes widened. A real music teacher wanted to talk to her? She had not spoken to a music teacher since she left the conservatory. "I used to study music," Maya said shyly. "But that was a long time ago." Dr. Rossetti gestured to the empty chair at her table. "Please sit with me. I'd love to hear about your musical background. That performance was not the work of someone who just learned to play for fun. You've had serious training." Maya hesitated. She was not used to adults being interested in her story. Most adults either ignored her or told her to go away. But Dr. Rossetti seemed different. Her eyes were kind and patient. Maya sat down at the table. Dr. Rossetti poured her a glass of water from the pitcher on the table. "Tell me about yourself," Dr. Rossetti said. "What's your name? Where did you learn to play? Like that?" "My name is Maya Chen," Maya said quietly. "My father taught me to play piano. He was a professional pianist." Dr. Rossetti's eyebrows went up. "Chen? Was your father David Chen by any chance?" Maya gasped. "You knew my father?" "I knew of him," Dr. Rossetti said excitedly. "I heard him perform several times. He was magnificent, one of the most gifted pianists of his generation. I always wondered what happened to him. He seemed to disappear from the concert circuit a few years ago. Maya felt tears coming to her eyes. It had been so long since anyone had spoken about her father with respect and admiration. He died in a car accident 2 years ago, Maya said softly. Everything changed after that. Dr. Rossetti reached across the table and gently touched Maya's. Andores, I'm so sorry for your loss. Your father was a remarkable musician, and clearly, he passed his gift on to you. Maya told Dr. Rossetti about her life before her father died. She talked about the big house with the music room. She talked about the conservatory and her friends there. She talked about the concerts she used to perform in. Then Maya told Dr. Rossetti about what happened after her father's death. She talked about her mother's sadness and illness. She talked about losing their house and having to sell the piano. She talked about the shelter and how her mother disappeared. Dr. Rossetti listened to every word without interrupting. Her face showed sadness and concern, but also anger at how unfair life had been to Maya. How long have you been on your own? Dr. Rossetti asked. 6 months, Maya said. I try to find places to sleep that are safe. Sometimes I find food in garbage cans. Sometimes people give me money, but not very often. Dr. Rossetti was quiet for a long moment. She was thinking about something important. Maya, she said finally, what you played tonight was not just good, it was exceptional. You have a rare gift that most musicians would die for. But talent like yours needs to be nurtured and protected. It needs proper training and practice. Maya nodded sadly. I know, but I don't have anywhere to practice. I don't have a piano. I don't have money for lessons. Sometimes I'm afraid I'm forgetting everything my father taught me. Dr. Rossetti leaned forward. What if I told you that you don't have to worry about those things anymore? Maya looked confused. What do you mean? I mean, Dr. Rossetti said slowly, that I would like to help you. I have a house with a piano. I have connections in the music world. Most importantly, I have experience helping young musicians develop their talents. Maya stared at Dr. Rossetti. You want to help me? But you don't even know me. I know enough, Dr. Rossetti said firmly. I know that you have extraordinary talent. I know that you've been through terrible hardships but haven't given up on music. I know that your father would be proud of how well you played tonight. Maya felt her heart beating fast. Could this really be happening? Could someone actually want to help her? What kind of help? Maya asked carefully. She had learned to be suspicious of adults who promised too much. Doctor, Rossetti smiled. First, you need a safe place to live. I have a guest room in my house that's been empty for years. You could stay there. Second, you need a piano to practice on. I have a beautiful grand piano that hardly gets used anymore. Third, you need to get back to serious musical training. I still have connections at several conservatories. Maya felt dizzy. This seemed too good to be true. But why would you do this for me? What do you want in return? Dr. Rossetti laughed gently. I don't want anything in return, Maya. Well, except to hear you play more beautiful music. You see, I've spent my whole life teaching music to young people. I've helped hundreds of students over the years, but I've never met anyone with your natural ability combined with such deep musical understanding. Maya was quiet for a long time. She was trying to decide if she could trust Dr. Rossetti. She had been disappointed by adults before. She had learned that sometimes people made promises they didn't keep. Dr. Rossetti seemed to understand Maya's hesitation. I know this is a lot to think about, she said. And I know you have every reason to be careful about trusting people. How about this? Why don't you come to my house tomorrow morning? You can see the piano in the guest room. If you feel comfortable, you can stay. If not, you can leave anytime you want. Maya thought about her options. She could go back to sleeping, under bridges and looking for food in garbage cans. Or she could take a chance on this kind woman who seemed to genuinely care about her music. Where do you live? Maya asked. Dr. Rossetti wrote her address on a napkin. It's about a 20-minute walk from here. There's a bus stop right outside, if you prefer to take the bus. Maya looked at the address. It was in a nice neighborhood that she had walked through before. She remembered seeing big houses with gardens. Okay, Maya said quietly. I'll come tomorrow morning. But if I feel uncomfortable, I can leave? Of course, Dr. Rossetti said. This has to be your choice, Maya. No one should ever force you to do anything you don't want to do. Dr. Rossetti reached into her purse and pulled out some money. Here, she said, offering it to Maya. Get yourself a good breakfast tomorrow morning before you come to my house. Maya looked at the money. It was more than she usually got from people in a whole week. I can't take this, Maya said. You're already being too kind. Please, Dr. Rossetti said. Let me do this small thing. You made everyone in this restaurant very happy tonight with your music. This is just a small thank you. Maya took the money carefully. Thank you, Dr. Rossetti, for everything. Dr. Rossetti smiled. Call me Elena. And Maya? Your father would be very proud of you. You played with such love and soul tonight. That's something that can't be taught. That comes from the heart. Maya felt tears in her eyes again. She had not heard anyone say her father would be proud of her in a very long time. As Maya left the restaurant, she felt something she had not felt in months. She felt hope. Maybe her life could get better. Maybe she could play music again. Maybe she could have a future. Maya walked through the quiet streets thinking about tomorrow. She was nervous but also excited. For the first time in a long time, she had something to look forward to. Dr. Rossetti watched Maya leave through the restaurant window. She was already making plans in her mind. She was going to call some old friends who worked at music schools. She was going to make sure Maya got the training she deserved. Dr. Rossetti had helped many students over the years, but she had a feeling that Maya was going to be special. Very special indeed. 3 weeks had passed since Maya moved into Dr. Rossetti's house. Maya could hardly believe how much her life had changed. She had her own room with a soft bed and clean sheets. She had regular meals and hot showers. Most importantly, she had access to Elena's beautiful grand piano. Every morning, Maya would wake up early and practice for hours. Her fingers were getting stronger and more flexible. The calluses from living on the streets were fading away. Her musical skills were coming back quickly, like a flower blooming after rain. Elena had been wonderful to Maya. She gave Maya new clothes and personal items. She made sure Maya ate healthy food and got enough sleep. But Elena was not just being kind, she was also being smart. She knew that Maya needed to be physically and emotionally healthy before she could reach her full musical potential. In the evenings, Elena would sit and listen to Maya practice. Sometimes she would offer gentle suggestions about technique or interpretation. But mostly she just listened in amazement. Maya's talent was even greater than Elena had first thought. You play with such maturity, Elena told Maya one evening. Most musicians take years to develop the emotional depth you already have. Your experiences, as difficult as they were, have given you something precious. They've given you the ability to feel deeply and express that feeling through music. Maya was grateful for Elena's kindness, but she was also worried. She knew that Elena had been making phone calls to music schools and conservatories. Elena was trying to help Maya get back into formal musical education, but Maya was scared. What if the schools didn't want her? What if they thought she was too far behind? What if they found out she had been homeless? Maya's fears became reality sooner than she expected. One afternoon, Elena came home with a serious expression on her face. Maya was practicing when she heard the front door close. Usually, Elena would come to the piano room and listen for a while. But today, Elena went straight to the kitchen. Maya finished the piece she was playing and went to find Elena. She was sitting at the kitchen table with papers spread out in front of her. Elena, Maya said quietly, is everything okay? Elena looked up with a forced smile. Sit down, Maya. We need to talk. Maya's stomach dropped. Those words never meant anything good. She sat down across from Elena at the table. I've been talking to people at the Metropolitan Academy, Elena said. That's one of the best music conservatories in the city. I told them about your talent and asked if they would consider giving you an audition. Maya nodded. She knew about the Metropolitan Academy. It was even more prestigious than the conservatory she used to attend. What did they say? Maya asked, though she was afraid to hear the answer. Elena sighed. Most of the faculty are very interested in hearing you play. Your reputation from your previous conservatory is still remembered. Several teachers spoke very highly of your past performances. But, Maya said, sensing there was more. But there's one man who is opposing your audition. His name is Marcus Sterling. He's the head of the piano department and has a lot of influence at the school. Maya had heard of Marcus Sterling. He was a famous music critic who wrote reviews in newspapers and magazines. He was known for being very harsh and critical. What did he say? Maya asked. Elena looked uncomfortable. He said that the conservatory should not waste time on students who have been out of formal training for so long. He said that homeless people are unreliable and would probably cause problems for the school. Maya felt her face get hot with anger and shame. So they won't let me audition? Actually, Elena said with a small smile, that's not exactly what happened. Marcus Sterling is very proud and stubborn. When the other faculty members disagreed with him, he made a challenge. What kind of challenge? Elena pulled out a piece of paper. He said that if you can prove you're serious about music, he might consider supporting your application, but he wants you to prove it in a very difficult way. Maya leaned forward. How? He wants you to audition for 5 consecutive days at the conservatory. Each day, he will give you a different piece of music to learn. You will have exactly 24 hours to prepare each piece. Then you must perform it perfectly in front of a panel of judges. Maya stared at Elena. That's impossible. No one can learn a difficult piece of music in just one day. I know it sounds very hard, Elena said, but Marcus Sterling believes that truly gifted musicians should be able to do exactly that. He thinks that if you can't handle this challenge, you don't belong at a top conservatory. Maya was quiet for a long time. She was thinking about what this challenge would mean. 5 days of intense pressure, 5 days of proving herself to people who already doubted her, 5 days of risking failure in front of everyone. What happens if I fail? Maya asked. Elena took Maya's hand. If you don't pass the challenge, Marcus Sterling will block your application to the conservatory, and his opinion carries a lot of weight at other schools too. It would be very difficult to get into any top music program. And if I succeed? If you pass all 5 days of the challenge, Marcus Sterling has promised to personally recommend you for a full scholarship to the conservatory. A full scholarship, Maya. That means free tuition, free room and board, everything. Maya felt her heart racing. A full scholarship to one of the best music schools in the country. It was everything she had ever dreamed of. But the challenge seemed so difficult, almost impossible. What kind of pieces would I have to learn? Maya asked. Elena pulled out another paper. Marcus Sterling hasn't told us exactly what pieces he'll choose, but he said they will be at an advanced level. Bach, Chopin, Liszt, Rachmaninoff, that level of difficulty. Maya knew those composers well. Their music was beautiful but very challenging. Even when she was studying at the conservatory full-time, it would take her weeks to learn pieces by those composers properly. When would I have to start? Maya asked. Next Monday, if you decide to accept the challenge. Maya stood up and walked to the window. She looked out at Elena's garden, where flowers were blooming in the spring sunshine. 6 months ago, she had been sleeping outside in the cold. Now she had a chance to get into one of the best music schools in the world, but she had to risk everything to get it. Maya, Elena said gently, you don't have to do this. This challenge is not fair. It's designed to be nearly impossible. We can try to get you into other schools, less prestigious ones that might be more willing to overlook your situation. Maya turned back to Elena. But you think I can do it, don't you? Elena smiled. I think you are the most talented young musician I've ever met. I think you have abilities that Marcus Sterling can't even imagine. But I also know that this challenge will be extremely difficult and stressful. I don't want you to feel like you have to prove yourself to anyone. Maya thought about her father. She remembered him telling her that music was the most powerful thing in the world. She remembered him saying that she had magic in her fingers. I want to do it, Maya said suddenly. Elena looked surprised. Are you sure? We can take some time. To think about it. No, Maya said firmly. I want to accept Marcus Sterling's challenge. I want to show him and everyone else that talent doesn't disappear just because you've been through hard times. I want to prove that my father's daughter is strong enough to handle anything. Elena stood up and hugged Maya. I'm proud of you for being so brave. But remember, no matter what happens, you are already a success. You've survived things that would have broken many people. You've kept your musical gift alive through the worst circumstances. Nothing Marcus Sterling says can change that. Maya hugged Elena back. Thank you for believing in me. Thank you for giving me this chance. That evening, Maya practiced until very late. She played pieces by all the composers that might be on the challenge. She worked on her technique and her speed. She prepared her mind and her fingers for the test that was coming. Elena made phone calls to arrange the details of the challenge. She spoke to the other faculty members at the conservatory who supported Maya. She made sure that the judging would be fair, even if Marcus Sterling was trying to make the challenge impossible. As Maya fell asleep that night, she thought about the week ahead. She was nervous but also excited. This was her chance to fight for her future. This was her chance to honor her father's memory. This was her chance to prove that she belonged in the world of serious music. Maya didn't know exactly what pieces Marcus Sterling would choose for her, but she knew one thing for certain. She was going to give everything she had to this challenge. She was going to show the world what Maya Chen could do. Monday morning arrived gray and rainy. Maya woke up at 6 o'clock even though her audition was not until noon. She was too nervous to sleep anymore. Her stomach felt twisted with worry, but she forced herself to eat the breakfast that Elena had prepared for her. Remember, Elena said as they drove to the conservatory, you don't have to be perfect. You just have to show them your musical understanding and technical skill. The judges want to see how you handle pressure and how quickly you can learn. Maya nodded, but she was not really listening. She was thinking about all the things that could go wrong. What if her hands shook? What if she forgot the music? What if Marcus Sterling had chosen a piece that was too difficult for anyone to learn in one day? The Metropolitan Academy was a beautiful old building with tall windows and marble floors. Maya had been there once before, years ago, for a master class with her father. She remembered feeling intimidated by the serious atmosphere and the advanced students practicing in every room. Elena led Maya to a small office where they were supposed to meet Marcus Sterling. The door was open and Maya could see a tall, thin man with gray hair sitting behind a desk. He looked up when they entered, and Maya saw that his eyes were cold and unfriendly. Miss Chen, I presume, Marcus Sterling said without getting up or offering to shake hands. I must say I was surprised when Dr. Rossetti told me about your unusual circumstances. It's been some time since we've had a student with such an unconventional background. Maya felt her face get hot. She knew he was talking about her being homeless. Yes, sir, she said quietly. Marcus Sterling stood up and walked around his desk. He was taller than Maya had expected, and he looked down at her with a skeptical expression. I want to be very clear about what we're doing here, he said. This conservatory has a reputation for excellence. We cannot afford to take chances on students who might not be able to handle the rigorous demands of professional musical training. This challenge will test not only your musical ability but also your discipline, your work ethic, and your mental toughness. Maya nodded. I understand, sir. Marcus Sterling picked up a piece of paper from his desk. Your first piece is Bach's Partita No. 2 in C minor, the Sinfonia movement. You have until noon tomorrow to prepare it. The performance will take place in the main recital hall, in front of a panel of 5 judges. Maya's heart sank. She knew this piece. It was extremely difficult, with complex counterpoint and demanding technical passages. Even professional pianists needed weeks to prepare it properly. May I see the music? Maya asked. Marcus Sterling handed her the sheet music. Maya looked at it quickly, trying to assess how difficult it would be to learn in 24 hours. The notes seemed to dance and swim before her eyes. You may practice in room 15 for the rest of today, Marcus Sterling said. The room will be available to you until 10 o'clock tonight. Dr. Rossetti may stay if she wishes, but no coaching is allowed during the official practice time. Maya and Elena went to room 15, which contained an old but well-maintained piano. Maya sat down at the bench and spread out the Bach music. Her hands were shaking slightly as she placed them on the keys. "Just start slowly," Elena whispered. "Don't worry about the tempo yet. Focus on getting the notes right first." Maya began to play the first few measures very slowly. The music was beautiful, but incredibly complex. Bach had written multiple melodic lines that wove together like a musical tapestry. Maya had to make each line clear and distinct while still keeping the overall flow of the piece. For the first hour, Maya just worked on reading the notes correctly. There were many sharps and flats, and the key signature kept changing. Maya's eyes hurt from concentrating so hard on the small printed notes. After the first hour, Maya began to work on the fingering. In piano music, the choice of which fingers to use for which notes is very important. Good fingering makes difficult passages possible to play smoothly. Bad fingering makes even simple passages sound choppy and awkward. Elena sat quietly in a corner of the room, occasionally offering encouragement but mostly just listening. She could see that Maya was working harder than she had ever worked before. By lunchtime, Maya had learned about half of the piece. Her fingers were getting tired and her back ached from sitting at the piano for so long. Elena brought her a sandwich and some water. "How do you feel about it so far?" Elena asked. Maya rubbed her eyes. "It's very difficult, but I think I can learn all the notes by tonight. The hard part will be making it sound musical instead of just technical." Elena nodded. "That's always the challenge with Bach. The technical demands are so high that it's easy to focus only on getting the notes right and forget about the beauty of the music." Maya ate her lunch quickly and went back to practicing. The afternoon, hours passed slowly. Maya worked on small sections over and over again, gradually building up the tempo. Some passages required her to play very fast scales with both hands moving in opposite directions. Other passages required delicate touch and careful balance between the different melodic lines. By 6 o'clock in the evening, Maya had learned all the notes of the piece. But learning the notes was only the beginning. Now she had to work on making the music sound expressive and polished. Maya practiced the piece from beginning to end several times. Each time she discovered new problems that needed to be fixed. Sometimes her hands would get tangled up in a difficult passage. Sometimes she would play a wrong note and have to stop and correct it. Elena ordered dinner for them and brought it to the practice room. Maya ate while reading through the music again, trying to memorize it. She knew that performing from memory would give her more freedom to be expressive. "Maya," Elena said gently, "it's 8 o'clock. You need to pace yourself. You can't practice effectively if you're exhausted." But Maya was determined to use every minute available to her. She practiced until 10 o'clock when the building closed. By then she could play the entire piece from memory, though not perfectly. Elena drove Maya home through the quiet streets. Maya was so tired that she almost fell asleep in the car. But her mind was still racing, thinking about all the passages that needed more work. "Try to get some sleep," Elena said as they arrived home. "Your brain needs rest to absorb everything you practiced today." But Maya could not sleep. She lay in bed thinking about the music, playing through difficult passages in her mind. She was worried that she would forget something important. She was worried that her performance would not be good enough. Maya finally fell asleep around 2 in the morning. She woke up at 7, feeling tired but alert. She had only 5 hours left to practice before her audition. Elena made her a good breakfast, but Maya could barely eat. Her stomach was too nervous to accept much food. They arrived at the conservatory at 8 o'clock. Maya went straight to room 15 and began practicing. She worked on the most difficult passages first, playing them slowly and carefully. Gradually, she built up the speed until she could play them at the proper tempo. At 11 o'clock, Elena reminded Maya that she needed to stop practicing and prepare for the audition. Maya's hands were tired and her mind felt overloaded with musical information. "Remember," Elena said, "you know this piece now. Trust your preparation, trust your musical instincts, and most importantly, don't forget to breathe." Maya walked to the main recital hall feeling like she was in a dream. The hall was small but elegant with excellent acoustics. 5 judges sat at a table near the front. Marcus Sterling was in the center, looking stern and skeptical. Maya sat down at the beautiful grand piano on the stage. She adjusted the bench and tested the pedals. The piano had a rich, warm tone that was very different from the practice room piano. "Miss Chen," Marcus Sterling called out, "you may begin when you are ready." Maya placed her hands on the keys and took a deep breath. She thought about her father and all the hours they had spent practicing together. She thought about the beautiful music that Bach had created hundreds of years ago. She thought about how grateful she was to have this opportunity. Maya began to play. The first notes were soft and careful, but as she continued, her confidence grew. Her fingers moved across the keys with increasing assurance. The complex counterpoint began to make sense, and the different melodic lines sang out clearly. There were a few small mistakes, but Maya did not let them stop her. She continued playing with focus and determination. The music filled the hall with its intricate beauty. When Maya finished, the hall was quiet for a moment. Then the judges began writing notes on their papers. Maya could not tell from their faces what they thought of her performance. Marcus Sterling looked up from his notes. "Thank you, Miss Chen. Your next piece will be announced this afternoon. You may collect it from my office at 3 o'clock. Maya stood up from the piano bench feeling drained but relieved. She had survived the first day of the challenge. 4 more days to go. 4 days had passed since Maya began Marcus Sterling's challenge. Each day had brought a new piece of music more difficult than the last. On Tuesday, she had played a Chopin ballade that required incredible technical precision and emotional expression. On Wednesday, it was a listitude that pushed her hands to their physical limits. On Thursday, she performed a Rachmaninoff prelude that demanded both power and delicate touch. Maya had passed each test, but she could see that Marcus Sterling was not impressed. After each performance, he would nod curtly and announce the next piece without any positive comments. The other judges seemed more encouraging, but Marcus Sterling's opinion was the one that mattered most. Now it was Friday morning, the final day of the challenge. Maya sat in Marcus Sterling's office waiting to receive her last piece. She was exhausted from 4 days of intense practice and pressure. Her fingers were sore and her mind felt foggy from lack of sleep. Elena sat beside her, looking worried. Maya had been getting quieter and more withdrawn each day. The stress of the challenge was taking a toll on her physically and emotionally. Marcus Sterling entered the office and sat behind his desk without greeting them. He looked at Maya with the same cold expression he had worn all week. "Miss Chen," he said, "you have survived 4 days of this challenge. I must admit your technical abilities are adequate for someone who has been out of formal training for so long." Maya felt a small spark of hope. Was Marcus Sterling finally going to say something positive? "However," he continued, "I have yet to see any evidence that you possess the artistic maturity required for advanced study at this conservatory. Your performances have been technically correct but emotionally shallow. You play the notes, but you do not communicate the deeper meaning of the music." Maya felt like she had been slapped. After all her hard work, Marcus Sterling was telling her that her playing was shallow and meaningless. Marcus Sterling picked up a piece of paper from his desk. "For your final performance, I am giving you a choice. You may choose any piece you wish to perform, any composer, any style, any level of difficulty. This is your opportunity to show us who you really are as a musician." Maya stared at him in surprise. All week, he had chosen the pieces for her. Now suddenly he was letting her choose. "There is one condition," Marcus Sterling added with a slight smile. "Since you are choosing the piece yourself, we expect a performance of the highest artistic and technical standards. This is your chance to prove that you belong here. Don't waste it." Maya and Elena left the office in silence. They walked to room 15, where Maya had spent so many hours practicing this week. Maya sat at the piano but did not open any music. "What are you thinking?" Elena asked gently. Maya stared at the piano keys. "I don't know what to play. All week, I've been learning other people's choices. Now I have to decide for myself, and I feel completely lost. Elena sat down beside Maya on the piano bench. Let me ask you something. When you were living on the streets, did you ever imagine playing piano again? Maya shook her head. I thought it was over. I thought I would never get to make music again. But you never stopped loving music, did you? No, Maya said quietly. Even when I didn't have a piano to play, I would hear music in my head. I would remember pieces my father taught me. Music was the only thing that kept me going. Elena nodded. So what piece of music means the most to you? What piece connects you to your deepest feelings about music and life? Maya was quiet for a long time. She thought about all the music she had learned over the years. She thought about the pieces that had brought her joy and comfort. She thought about the music that reminded her of her father. Suddenly, Maya knew what she wanted to play. I want to play something I wrote myself, she said. Elena looked surprised. You compose music? Maya nodded. I wrote a piece last year when I was still living in the shelter with my mother. It was just before she disappeared. I was feeling so sad and scared, and I needed to express those feelings somehow. So I wrote a piece for piano. I called it Letter to My Father. Elena's eyes filled with tears. Maya, that sounds perfect. But do you remember it well enough to perform it? Maya placed her hands on the piano keys. I remember every note. I played it over and over in my head during the months when I didn't have access to a piano. Maya began to play softly. The music that came from the piano was unlike anything she had performed all week. It was deeply personal and emotional. It started with a simple melody that sounded like a child asking questions. Then it developed into more complex harmonies that expressed confusion and loss. As Maya played, she remembered writing this piece in the crowded shelter. She remembered trying to be quiet so she wouldn't disturb other families. She remembered crying as she wrote certain passages that reminded her of her father. The middle section of the piece was angry and turbulent. It expressed Maya's frustration with the unfairness of life. Why did her father have to die? Why did her mother get sick? Why did they lose everything? But the final section of the piece was different. It was hopeful and gentle. It expressed Maya's belief that her father was still with her in some way. It expressed her determination to keep his memory alive through music. When Maya finished playing, Elena was crying openly. Maya, that was the most beautiful piece I've ever heard you play. It's not just technically excellent, it's a work of art. It tells a story that everyone can understand and feel. Maya looked at the clock. It was already noon. Her audition was, at 2 o'clock. I need to practice it more, Maya said. I want to make sure I can play it perfectly. But Elena shook her head. Maya, you don't need to practice this piece. You've been living with it for a year. It's part of you. Trust yourself. Trust your heart. At 2 o'clock, Maya walked into the recital hall for the last time. The 5 judges were waiting, including Marcus Sterling. Maya noticed that there were other people in the audience today, faculty members and students who had heard about the challenge and wanted to see how it ended. Maya sat at the piano and adjusted the bench. She looked out at the audience and saw Elena in the front row, giving her an encouraging smile. Miss Chen, Marcus Sterling called out, what piece will you be performing for us today? Maya took a deep breath. I will be performing an original composition of my own. It's called Letter to My Father. Maya heard murmurs from the audience. It was unusual for a student to perform their own composition in an audition like this. Marcus Sterling raised his eyebrows. An original composition? That's quite ambitious. Very well, you may proceed. Maya placed her hands on the keys and closed her eyes for a moment. She thought about her father and all the lessons he had taught her. She thought about the journey that had brought her to this moment. She thought about all the people who had helped her along the way. Then Maya began to play. From the very first note, everyone in the hall could tell that this performance was different. Maya was not just playing music, she was sharing her soul. Every phrase was filled with genuine emotion. Every dynamic change told part of her story. As Maya played the angry middle section, some people in the audience leaned forward in their seats. They could feel her pain and frustration. When she reached the hopeful final section, Several people were wiping tears from their eyes. Maya poured everything she had into this performance. All her technical training, all her musical knowledge, all her life experiences came together in these few minutes of music. When the last note faded away, the hall was completely silent. No one moved. No one breathed. The music had created a moment of perfect stillness. Then slowly, someone began to clap. Then another person joined in. Soon, the entire hall was applauding loudly. Several people stood up, giving Maya a standing ovation. Maya looked at the judges' table. 4 of the 5 judges were clapping enthusiastically. But Marcus Sterling was not clapping. He was just sitting there, staring at Maya with an expression she could not read. Maya felt her heart sink. Had she failed? Had Marcus Sterling not been moved by her performance? Then Marcus Sterling stood up. He walked slowly toward the piano. Maya held her breath, waiting for his verdict. When Marcus Sterling reached the piano, he did something unexpected. He began to clap. Not the polite, professional clapping of a judge, but the genuine emotional applause of someone who had been deeply moved. "Miss Chen," Marcus Sterling said, and his voice was different now, warmer and more human than Maya had ever heard it. "In 40 years of teaching music, I have rarely heard a performance that combined such technical excellence with such profound emotional truth. That was not just playing. That was communication of the highest order." Maya felt tears streaming down her face. She could not believe what she was hearing. Marcus Sterling turned to address the entire hall. "Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to announce that Miss Maya Chen has not only passed this challenge, but has demonstrated that she possesses the rare combination of technical skill and artistic vision that defines a true musician. I will personally recommend her for a full scholarship to this conservatory." The applause erupted again, even louder than before. Maya saw Elena crying and laughing at the same time. She saw other faculty members nodding their approval. She saw students her own age looking at her with respect and admiration. But most importantly, Maya felt something she had not felt in a very long time. 6 months later, Maya stood on the stage of the Metropolitan Academy's Grand Concert Hall. She wore a beautiful black dress that Elena had bought for her, and her hair was styled elegantly. But despite her polished appearance, Maya still felt like the same girl who had once asked to play piano for food. Tonight was the conservatory's annual gala concert, where the most talented students performed for an audience of wealthy donors, music critics, and industry professionals. Maya had been chosen to perform as the featured soloist, an honor usually reserved for graduate students. As Maya walked to the piano, she looked out at the audience. The concert hall was packed with over 1,000 people. In the front row, she could see Elena beaming with pride. Beside Elena sat someone Maya had never expected to see again, her mother, Sarah. Sarah looked healthy and clean for the first time in years. She had been in a treatment program for her addiction and depression. When Elena contacted her to tell her about Maya's success, Sarah had been overwhelmed with pride and regret. She had worked hard to get better so she could be here tonight, to support her daughter. Maya caught her mother's eye and smiled. Sarah wiped tears from her cheeks and smiled back. They had talked several times over the past few months, slowly rebuilding their relationship. It would take time to heal all the hurt, but they were both committed to trying. Maya sat down at the magnificent concert grand piano. This piano was worth more than most people's houses, and its tone was perfect. Maya had practiced on this piano many times over the past 6 months, but tonight it felt different. Tonight it felt like an old friend. The audience grew quiet as Maya prepared to play. She was going to perform the same piece that had changed her life 6 months ago, "Letter to My Father." But tonight's performance would be different. Maya had grown so much as a musician since that audition day. Her technique was more polished, her interpretation deeper, and her confidence stronger. But more than that, Maya was playing for a different reason tonight. 6 months ago, she had played to prove herself worthy. Tonight, she was playing to share a gift. She wanted to give the audience the same feeling of hope and healing that music had given her. Maya placed her hands on the keys and began to play. From the very first note, the audience was captivated. Maya's playing had developed a new level of maturity and sophistication during her months at the conservatory, but she had not lost the emotional honesty that made her performance so powerful. Maya played. She thought about the journey that had brought her to this moment. She remembered the cold nights sleeping under bridges. She remembered the hunger and fear of living on the streets. She remembered the kindness of strangers who had helped her along the way. But Maya also thought about the future. She had big plans that went far beyond her own musical career. 3 months ago, Maya had started a program called Hidden Harmonies. It was designed to identify and help musically talented young people who were homeless or living in difficult circumstances. Maya worked with social workers and shelter staff to find kids who showed musical aptitude, but lacked opportunities for training. Every Saturday, Maya and other conservatory students would go to homeless shelters and community centers to give free music lessons. They brought portable keyboards and basic sheet music. They taught children and teenagers who had never had the chance to learn an instrument. Some of the kids Maya worked with reminded her of herself. They had natural talent, but had never been able to develop it because of their circumstances. Others were just beginning to discover their musical abilities. All of them were hungry for the hope and beauty that music could provide. Maya had already helped 2 young musicians get scholarships to music programs. One was a 15-year-old boy who could play guitar beautifully despite never having formal lessons. The other was a 12-year-old girl who had an incredible singing voice but had been too shy to perform for anyone. The Hidden Harmonies program was starting to get attention from music educators and social workers around the country. Maya had been invited to speak at conferences about how music could help young people overcome trauma and poverty. She was becoming an advocate for arts education and social justice. As Maya played the middle section of her composition, the angry, turbulent part that expressed her frustration with life's unfairness, she thought about all the young people who were still living the life she had escaped. She thought about kids sleeping in cars and shelters, kids who were hungry and scared, kids who had given up hope. Maya played louder and with more intensity. She wanted the audience to understand that behind every homeless person was a human being with dreams and talents. She wanted them to know that circumstances did not define a person's worth or potential. Then Maya moved into the final section of her piece, the hopeful, gentle part that expressed her belief in the power of love and music to heal. As she played these notes, she thought about Elena, who had seen her potential when no one else would. She thought about her father, whose memory continued to inspire her. She thought about her mother, who was fighting to rebuild her life. When Maya finished playing, the audience erupted in the longest standing ovation in the conservatory's history. People were crying and cheering at the same time. Maya stood up from the piano bench and took several bows. As the applause continued, Maya noticed something special happening. Marcus Sterling, who was sitting in the VIP section, was not just clapping. He was standing and shouting "Bravo!" with tears streaming down his face. 6 months ago, he had been her harshest critic. Now he was one of her strongest supporters. After the concert, there was a reception where Maya was surrounded by admirers. Music critics wanted to interview her. Wealthy donors wanted to support her programs. Fellow students congratulated her on her performance. But the most important moment came when Maya was finally able to talk privately with her mother. "Maya," Sarah said, holding her daughter's hands, "I am so proud of you. Not just because of your musical success, but because of the person you've become. You could have been bitter and angry about what happened to our family. Instead, you've used your experiences to help other people." Maya hugged her mother tightly. "I learned something important when I was living on the streets," Maya said. "I learned that everyone has the potential for greatness no matter what their circumstances. Music taught me that. Music saved me. Now I want to use music to save other people." Elena joined them, and the 3 women stood together thinking about how far they had all come. "What's next for you, Maya?" Elena asked. Maya smiled. "I'm going to keep studying and improving as a musician, but I'm also going to expand the Hidden Harmonies program. I want to open music centers in cities across the country. I want to create scholarships for talented kids who can't afford music education. I want to prove that genius can be found anywhere, even in the most unlikely places. As the evening wound down, Maya walked back to the concert hall one more time. The lights were dimmed, and the audience had gone home. But the piano was still there, waiting silently on the stage. Maya sat down at the piano bench and played softly, not a formal piece, but just gentle melodies that came from her heart. She thought about the girl who had walked into the Bella Vista restaurant 6 months ago, desperate and hungry. That girl had asked for food, but what she had really been asking for was hope. Now Maya understood that her story was not really about overcoming homelessness or getting into a prestigious school. Her story was about the power of music to transform lives. It was about the importance of seeing potential in every person, no matter their circumstances. It was about using your gifts not just for personal success, but to lift up others. Maya played one final chord and let it ring out in the empty hall. Tomorrow she would continue her studies. She would work on new pieces and improve her technique. She would expand her program to help more young musicians. But tonight, Maya was simply grateful. Grateful for music, for second chances, for people who believed in her when she couldn't believe in herself. Grateful for the journey that had brought her from the streets to the stage. As Maya walked out of the concert hall, she passed the restaurant where it all began. Bella Vista was closed for the night, but Maya could see the piano through the window. It was the same old piano where she had first played for food. Maya pressed her hand against the window glass and whispered, "Thank you. Thank you to the piano that had given her a chance. Thank you to the music that had saved her life. Thank you to everyone who had helped her along the way." Then Maya walked home through the quiet streets, already planning how she could help the next young musician who needed hope. Because Maya Chen had learned the most important lesson of all: talent is a gift, but using that gift to help others is what makes life truly meaningful. The girl who had once played for a piece of food had become a woman who played to feed souls, and her story was just beginning.